We're here. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Tuesday, one of the busiest travel days. Were you traveling? I kind of beat it last night. I was at the airport last night, and I knew something was up because even at like 10 o'clock at night, everyone was at the call waiting lot, just waiting, for the flights to come in, and it's getting worse, right? It's going to get worse today, tomorrow, and then we celebrate Thanksgiving. Exciting, right? And I hope that you're taking the next step. Like you're not going to do like Joe Biden and pardon the turkeys, peach and blossom. I mean, it happens every year. And, when there's nothing going on, it's a nice, cute story. Oh, he's pardoning the turkeys, but he's not really pardoning the turkeys. Because there's some tens of millions of turkeys are going to be eaten on Thursday, on the one day of the year that is all about turkey murder. And, it's just symbolic that you pardon two and then your net negative 80 million or whatever number of turkeys are killed. You should just go ahead and take the next step and pardon a turkey yourself. You should pardon I thought he was going to pardon, maybe he was going to pardon Donald Trump or something. But no, he's pardoning a real turkey. That's actually better. And you out there should all pardon a real turkey on Thanksgiving because it's better for you. You don't have to take Ozempic. You can just, not eat meat. That's a good start. And actually the active ingredient, the thing about Ozempic that makes it the weight loss, product that it is GLP-1. I think that's what they call it, GLP-1. And you can get GLP-1 from anything, like blueberries, like ginger, like cinnamon. And you can control your weight with ample doses of those foods and those spices and not have the risk of, have you seen the risk for Ozempic? I mean, they're serious. I mean, you got to read the fine print. I mean, it's serious when it's so fine you can't even read it. And yet people love Ozempic. They, we lost weight. Oh, you'll gain it back. Oh, yeah. Well, the GLP-1, like I said, you can use GLP-1 or get GLP-1 from blueberries. That's a lot better. Actually, go vegan for Thanksgiving. Have vegan blueberry pie. Forget the Ozempic. Anyway, we're going to talk about turkeys a little later because the butterball story is making waves. People are noticing, God, am I going to get a butterball? No, don't get a butterball. There's sexual abuse when it comes to butterball turkeys. Can you believe that? I mean, it's true. It's true. But another reason to go vegan on Thanksgiving. So we'll talk about that a little later. We'll talk about the news, talk about this new study about DEI that comes on the heels of Walmart saying no more DEI. See, Walmart just ups its image so that people who once considered Walmart as the, commissary for, Walmart's reputation. What kind of people go to Walmart? I mean, it's a classist thing, I know. But now everyone's hurting in terms of prices, so everyone's finding their way to Walmart. And now Walmart is upping its game, by saying, "Hey, we beat Target. we're better than Target, right? But the distasteful thing that Walmart is doing is it's saying, well, we're forgetting about DEI. Forgetting about like DEI doesn't matter. Like diversity, equity, and inclusion, all the great things that are counter to racism and sexism and all the bad isms, we're not going to do. I mean, this is like a KKK victory party. I mean, when you have institutions saying we're not going to do DEI, we're not. This is like a victory for the hooded ones. I mean, this is a hood, but it's it's a different kind of hood. But I was thinking about that, and now they're trying to justify dumping DEI, all these new studies. We're going to talk about that. That's coming up. And then, I wanted to mention George Gascon because he lost in LA to be district attorney. It's weird. He's like a carpetbagger district attorney. He went from San Francisco. He's considered progressive, right? But he couldn't hang out in San Francisco. He left. He went to LA, maybe because he thought he'd go into higher office in LA, not just DA. He was positioning, and he's from LA to begin with. George Gascon lost in the election a few weeks ago, to someone who's slightly more conservative. And George Gascon has made the news because he wanted to give the Menendez brothers a break. If you don't know who the Menendez brothers are, they're the ones who, that there's that Netflix movie, and that's sort of given the impetus to look into whether or not these guys got a fair break. And it really is a matter of, well, were they abused? Okay, maybe, you can think about killing your parents if you're abused to that degree. And some people say, well, wait a minute. These guys are sociopaths. These guys are liars. Do we trust them? Because they'll say anything to become free. And even though they've rehabilitated themselves, anyway, George Gascon wanted the new hearing, and that hearing was supposed to happen yesterday, was delayed. And then there are all these stories about George Gascon being so progressive. And I have to say this. My run-in with George Gascon was that he's not very progressive. He's a grandstander. Because if he was progressive, he would have gone after the guy who shot and killed my cousin back in 2014. George Gascon wouldn't, because the law says if a person is inside their home or their dwelling place and someone comes in, an intruder, you have a right to shoot to kill. My cousin wasn't an intruder in a criminal sense, but he went into an apartment, the wrong apartment, and was shot and killed. And he was shot and killed. And when the district attorney was considering murder charges, Gascon, who was a district attorney in San Francisco, said, no, we can't put murder charges, not when this guy has come in and is an intruder. And I kept wondering, well, Mr. Progressive District Attorney, why are you not being progressive toward a victim who was an innocent person who was shot and killed? It's because he was out to protect the innocent perp who shot and killed a man who came into his apartment. So the shooter was seen as getting the progressive the progressive favors of Gascon. My victim cousin was dead, and there was nothing to be gained by giving him the progressive favors, but by giving progressive favors to the killer and saying, no, you can go free. Well, everyone who loves the killer, his relatives, his friends, say, oh, wow, George Gascon, what a progressive. Meanwhile, my cousin, the victim, is dead, and he didn't care about my cousin's family, me, other members of the family were saying, hey, what about justice for Emil Guillermo? He didn't care. But the shooter got the progressive wisdom of George Gascon. And they let him go. Murderers free. Nothing, no recourse for the victim. And that is the progressive action of DA George Gascon in San Francisco. He went down to LA and he tried to let, other criminals free. I guess that's the thing. That's how progressive you are. Or that is the determinant on whether or not you're progressive. And he was tossed out in his ear because people aren't so progressive anymore. We just want fairness. Anyway, I had to mention Gascon because he just bugs me. He's a politician. I remember him saying, I asked him, why couldn't he prosecute this man who murdered my cousin? He knows he murdered my cousin. There was no question. He said, well, your cousin's just one man, Emil. That essentially what he said. I got to look at these big laws. I got to look at, impacting lots of people. And he chose not to deal or not to provide comfort to a victim's family, my cousin and his family, me, but to provide comfort to the shooter. And it's funny because, usually it's a person of color versus white. It's that kind of thing. But when it's the two people are persons of color, it gets really touchy because then it's a matter of class. But when you have two poor people caught in this battle for justice and the so-called progressive DA makes a decision, nobody wins. And to this day, you can enter into an apartment, not your own, be suspected of being an intruder and shot lawfully because of the homicide laws on the books in California. That's just the way it is. Terrible. I just had to get that off my chest about George Gascon. We call this WDAAAT, What Does an Asian American Think? This Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. I just talk about the news. This is a standard talk show. We talk about the news talk, play it on your radio while you're tooling down your car, the same way you used to listen to Rush Limbaugh, except he had such a twisted view of the world. And this is a different view, but a talk show. We get a lot of our information from ASAM News, ASAMnews.com. That's ASAM as in Asian American News. And here's some things that I think you need to know about because you may not have realized that, they're still counting votes in California. And this is one of the top stories. The big race in California is what happens to the conservative Asian Americans down there in Orange County. And right now, Michelle Steele is the incumbent, two-time incumbent, been there 4 years. Orange County, California congressional race. Very close race. And Michelle Steele is a Republican operative. She was married to a former Republican operative, but she essentially is one herself. She is straight up a Republican tool. The Democratic challenger was Derek Tran. And this is Derek Tran, Asian American, against Michelle Steele. Steele is her married name, but she is Asian American as well. And this was something that Asian Americans were looking at because Michelle Steele was popular for 2 years, but now Derek Tran has declared victory over Steele, which is, I think, incredible because you think about it. Election night, Tran was 5 percentage points down in this race, District 45 in California. And now here we are. That was November 5th. Now it's November 26th. They counted votes. Tran steadily made up ground. Remember, November 15th, Tran had taken a 36-vote lead. 36 votes. And he just slowly kept building it. And now he's declared victory. And he has this statement: this victory is a testament to the spirit and resilience of our community. I mean, the latest results show him 157,622, 157,622 votes to 157,041. Wow. Less than 600 votes separating them. And that's what it takes to count all the votes. Derek Tran, the Democrat, said, as the son of Vietnamese refugees, I understand firsthand the journey and sacrifices many families in our district have made for a better life. My parents came to this country to escape oppression and pursue the American dream, and their story reflects the journey of so many here in Southern California. So that's great. We got a Democrat, Derek Tran, declaring victory over Michelle Steele. This is a tremendous upset for Asian Americans. And you know, people think in California, Asian Americans, you know, we are after whites or after Latinos and whites, Asian Americans are third most numerous. And there's some power, but not really. In some areas, there are, you know, there, like I said, there, where you're going to see power exerted are in these congressional races in areas like Orange County. And this bucks the trend. If you think that America is going conservative, here an Asian American Democrat, Derek Tran, has declared victory by less than 600 votes over incumbent Michelle Steele, California 45. This is a significant race. Tran is going to go through, you know, the kind of rookie path, you know, in terms of gaining some foothold in Congress. You don't really go into Congress and do anything for the first year. You do the first year to get a good second year to get reelected for a second term. And it's going to be tough in Orange County, but this is something to cheer about. November 15th, Tran took a 36-vote lead. He was down by 5 percentage points on November 5th. They kept counting the votes, more votes coming in, to be counted, because it takes a while in California. 36 vote lead on November 15th. And then finally, he pulls ahead 157, 622. Each vote matters to Michelle Steele's 157, 041. 99% of the vote counted. And now Derek Tran declares victory. Congratulations to Derek Tran. Congratulations. ASAM News, I'm telling you, it's a great resource. You're not going to hear, unless you are in, Southern California. But if you're around the nation trying to figure out, well, what's happening, Asian Americans politically, that's as big a story as there is. Derek Tran defeating Michelle Steele. And believe me, Republicans will notice. I don't think Republicans lose control of the House, but it's very close. Still, Republicans can get away with anything with that margin plus the Vice President-elect J.D. Vance. But I don't know. I think it's a good sign that Asian Americans, Democrats, took over that seat. So that's a good sign. Another sign, I was in that town just the other day, Berkeley. Adina Ishii, Berkeley's first Asian American mayor. And if you know anything about Berkeley, you know there is there's a great Japanese American presence there. Japanese Americans, they found a place in Berkeley. And for the first Asian American mayor to be Adina Ishii, I think that's great. That's great. And I wasn't following the race, but this is the thing that you got to watch, because Asian American women in particular, or women in general, but you'll find Asian American women emerging, in politics. And usually these small local grassroots races turn out to be the stepping stone for state legislature, higher office. And it was a tight race. She beat out Sophie Han. Ishii had 1,039 votes. Oh, they had ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting. A lot of people like ranked choice voting because you got one election, and then you count all your second and third and fourth, favorites, and then you don't have to spend a lot of money in elections. But it's hard. I mean, you get things happening like, well, you get surprise victories. Like, I'm sure she was surprised here because you could win by being everyone's number two. Remember, that's how Sheng Tao, who's the mayor of Oakland, won. She didn't necessarily get everyone's first place votes, but she got everyone's second and third place votes, and it's enough so that she becomes number one. And then what I don't like about ranked choice voting is that no one ends up being happy, because it's not like this is the voice of the people. It's the voice of some people at certain moments within the election when it counted and that person won. It's not like some overwhelming mandate. It does save money, ranked choice voting, but I think, because you only have to do the vote once, and then they calculate, and so here it is. We ran through all the numbers, and here's your winner. Wow, I never thought she would win. I mean, this is why Sheng Tao, who was recalled from her position as Oakland mayor, I don't know if there was a lot of real. I don't know if people really cared enough for her. when you're everyone's number two, you're not going to have people like banging down the door saying, Shang, 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 Tao, Tao, Tao. People liked her enough, but clearly enough people didn't like her as number one. And in the end, that's the vote that counts. You got to be number one. You got to be the number one choice, not the best number two or number three choice. We could debate ranked choice voting, and a lot of people who are pro ranked choice voting they like the fact that in one election you cover it all, right? You just rank them in order of your preference, and then they do the calculations, and voila, by the sixth or seventh ballot, 7 people running, here's who won based on the number of votes that are available, and everyone claps and applauds. Hey, we saved democracy so much money by not having extra elections. But we wound up with him? Her? Say, I don't know. My opinion, I've talked about ranked choice voting, good and bad, for a long time. Sometimes it allows people who wouldn't have had a chance to get in. Great. Sheng Tao, would she have been elected without ranked choice voting? Probably not. And now she's recalled, and they're going to have a new election. Like I said, because when she won the ranked choice voting, I said, hey, Sheng Tao was everyone's number two, not their number one. All right. The news, this is a big news story. We got to talk about this big story of the day. Israel, Hezbollah signed ceasefire deal. Netanyahu could have done it weeks ago. He slow rolled it, which makes it, seem, well, it's all political, right? I'm glad the ceasefire's there. That's all it's really the most humanitarian thing you say. Finally, after 40,000 some plus deaths, finally. But Trump and Netanyahu butt heads, or not Trump, Biden and Netanyahu butt heads. Trump and Netanyahu are buddies. I'm sure this was a gift to Netanyahu's buddy Trump coming in. And it's going to be, the fighting doesn't end in Gaza, but the agreement, which was also approved by the Lebanese side, will end more than a year of fighting between Israel and Hezbollah. It'll allow hundreds of thousands of civilians on both sides of the border to gradually return home. But look at what they've done. Look at what they've done to each other's homes. So the ceasefire was the easy part. That's what we're going to find out. The harder part is going to be done under Trump's watch. He's a buddy of Netanyahu, so who knows exactly what's going to happen. But at least, finally, there was peace. Some people are calling Trump didn't win a voting landslide, but he won a legal landslide. You talk about the efforts to prosecute Trump, and what it did was it further confirmed this notion that presidents are above the law, because it's kind of the reason why Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, did what he did is because there's a long-standing Justice Department rule that you don't prosecute a sitting president. It's not a thing that can't be challenged, but then there's that, plus this idea that a president with who does something as a part of official acts is immune. And that case was heard last year, the appeals court, then it went to the Supreme Court, and they said, yeah, Trump's immune. A president is immune. So that wasn't helping, although it wasn't really the big part of the discussion yesterday. It was really more that, oh, at the Justice Department, we have a thing that we don't prosecute sitting presidents. So it would have made Jack Smith's job difficult, but the one glimmer of hope is that it doesn't preclude filing the case again against Trump when he's a private citizen. Now, the chances of that happening are probably slim, but that's a possibility. But still, I mean, you got to figure Jack Smith, Harvard law guy, humble beginnings, upstate New York, career prosecutor. This is the top of the game for him. I mean, he's not at a white shoe law firm making millions of dollars. He's out there prosecuting the criminals, as opposed to the white shoe law firms which try to make sure their clients don't become criminals. That's really it, right? The white shoe law firms, if you go to Harvard or Yale, you're out there trying to make sure your client doesn't go to jail. Trying to keep your client within the realm of the law or the good side of the law. Not easy if you have a client named Donald Trump. But that's a question for people who go to those high-powered law schools. You do it because you want to get the bad guys, or you want to do it because you want the good guys from becoming the bad guys? Because you know they're bad guys, but you know the law and they don't. What a profession this law thing is, huh? What a profession, law. How to find the truth you need. And I guess you earn every penny, because the bad guys who become good guys earn lots of money, and that trickles down to their lawyers. Meanwhile, the prosecutors are good, earnest, honest, moral, wanting to do right for justice. And it's a lot harder than you think. And they don't get the paycheck to match. But we have to thank and honor them. There are public servants. Yeah, I talked about the case yesterday when it came down, and you know, it's tough if you're Jack Smith. I mean, if you were rooting for him during the proceedings, like, hey, go get him. One thing I said yesterday, I have to correct myself. Walt Nauta, the co-conspirator, and there's another guy, Oliveira, I think was his name, named in the documents case, they are not the president. So they will not get the shield. And this is how unfair the law is, right? The president gets protected, but the the minority guys, he's Guamanian Filipino, plus Oliveira, I'm not sure what his background is, they get no protection at all. The thought was, they wouldn't go after Trump, so they won't go after the small fry. No, the small fry actually are probably going to be gone after. And too bad for Walt Nauta, because he was all in on the president. And I thought he might have thought that he was like done. He was good, clear. But heard some analysis yesterday indicating, yeah, good for the president, bad for Walton Alta and any other defendant. But he's the guy. And you know what? I don't think anyone cares about Walton Alta. But will the Justice Department go after him with zeal because that's all they can get? Or how about this? Will Donald Trump save his Coke boy? His Coke and box boy. I mean, some people were just Coke boys. But Nauta was Coke, box, and body boy. He was, and you could see him all throughout the election, the campaign. On election night, there was Walton. You could tell because he's like me without hair. Walton Nauta. Well, I'd like to see justice happen for Walton Nauta. He was just doing his job. Look, when you are a colonized person, working for the President of the United States is the highest thing. I used to work in Washington. I know what it's like. You have a boss, and it's raining, and you've got the umbrella out there, putting it over the boss's head. Boss can't get wet. Boss can't get wet. Walton Alta. In some ways, it was the height of his career. I mean, he didn't have to make any money. I mean, he probably made $100,000, $100,500, something like that. I think that was his salary working for Trump. Nice middle class life. It would be sad if they look around and Trump's free and playing golf, and they're looking around for someone to prosecute, and all they have left is Walton Alta. We'll follow. All right, a couple of other things. I wanted to talk about this story because I just can't believe it. I was a diversity professor. I taught diversity in media at San Francisco State for a couple semesters because that's important. How diverse the media is. People would say, "Oh, it's not important race-wise. It's really more important diverse, in terms of diversity, in terms of ideology, in terms of viewpoint." But I say it's one and the same. You need that mix, whether it's the substance or whether it's your background, your heritage. There's an importance for the media to be reflective of the country. I mean, that's what DEI was about. DEI was making sure that those are values. But now we've got companies saying DEI no. We have investors saying we don't want DEI. We have voters saying no DEI. DEI is WOKE. When did that happen? Well, we know when it happened. But when did it lose out? When did we lose that sense of, the sense that morals matter, morality matters? And now, without it, once again, the best tool to fight racism, the best tool to fight sexism, the best tool to fight transphobia, and general homophobia. I don't know general homophobia. Was he in the military? No, but the best tools to fight all that we're seeing dismantled before our eyes because people don't want DEI. That's like, oh, we don't want fairness. We want chaos and racism, and it doesn't compute with me. But now they can't just say, oh, we don't like DEI because we don't agree with DEI. Now you have to have fake institutes and people come out with studies so that they can hold up a study and say, oh, look, we got this study. It says DEI is crap. Get rid of it. Because people like this, they like studies. Oh, there's a study. Someone studied. We got a white paper. White paper. Remember everyone had a white paper for a while? Oh, do you have a white paper on that? No. I have a brown paper. I mean, I'm brown, but sometimes the paper's white, sometimes off-white. I used the off-white a lot in college. Because then you could see it. Anyway, now they have studies. So this is, of course, you get this on Fox News. New study finds DEI initiatives creating hostile attribution bias. HAB, creating HABs. Hostile attribution bias. What the? Using materials from within the DEI movement, the study measured explicit bias. Ooh, okay. Here's the lead. New research from the Network Contagion Research Institute, NCRI. Well, what does that mean? The Network Contagion Research Institute and Rutgers University reveals that some diversity, equity, and inclusion training methods may cause psychological harm. That's it. That's it. The mental health of our country is at risk if you try to say something is racist and try to correct it. The perps of racism, the potential perps of racism, you protect their mental health because they're distressed. Well, what about the victims? Oh, screw the victims. I mean, see, they're forgetting about the victims of race, and they're trying to protect all these people. They're making me be non-racist. I don't understand. They're making me be inclusive. I've got to include this gay black Filipino guy in my party. Oh, he's converted Jew. We got to include him. The law said. Psychological harm. Everyone's claiming psychological harm. The study released on Monday shows significant increases in hostility and punitive attitudes among participants exposed to DEI pedagogy covering subjects like race, religion, and caste. Oh, I'm feeling hostile. Help me. I'm feeling hostile toward that Filipino guy. Help me. Help me. I'm triggered. I'm being triggered. Acting. What we did was we took a lot of these ideas that were found to still be very prominent in a lot of these DEI lectures and interventions and training. Said co-author and NCRI Chief Science Officer Joel Finkelstein, the hostile attribution bias may contribute to increased intergroup hostility and authoritarian behavior in the long run. Well, that explains Trump, right? Authoritarian, we want to see authoritarian behavior, or we don't want to see it, but it comes out of hostile attribution bias, contributing to increased intergroup hostility and authoritarian behavior in the long run because someone's got to win and someone's got to be guaranteed the win all the time. So Finkelstein said they looked at all the DEI lectures and interventions and training. And we said, well, how is this going to affect people? What we found is that when people are exposed to this ideology, it's an ideology now. What happens is they become hostile without any indication that anything racist has happened. People are exposed to this ideology, they say. What happens is they become hostile without any indication that anything racist has happened. That means, oh my God, there's nothing racist that's happened. but people end up disliking each other, is what it says, because they hear this and they can't control themselves. They can't just be normal. They have to say, "Oh, this is why I hate you guys," or "I hate you guys for telling me this." Oh, and you know what they say about DEI? They say, "Oh, America, you're telling me America's bad and hateful." That's what you're telling me when you talk about slavery and you talk about all these things that white people did to black people. And you're making me feel bad for the whites. I know you should feel bad for the black. No, I feel bad for the whites. They have to go through this. Oh, they're so frail, those whites. A Pew Research Center study from 2023 found that 52% of American workers have DEI training events or meetings at work. $8 billion spent in this program. You know, I've been giving speeches on Asian American history. No one's paying me a big enough share of that $8 billion. I'm telling you. 52% of American workers get this training, but it's being cut back. You know, you saw Walmart saying, no, no, no. As DEI programs have become a major area of investment, their actual effectiveness remains a topic of debate, with NCRI studies suggesting they may exacerbate tensions rather than alleviate them. The study measured explicit bias, social distancing, demonization, and authoritarian tendencies with both the DEI materials and control materials. Their study included sharing anti-racist DEI materials from thought leaders like Ibram X. Kendi out of Boston University, White Fragility author Robin DiAngelo. I read White Fragility. I liked White Fragility. I was Filipino fragile after reading it. Specifically, the NCRI focused on materials which emphasize awareness of and opposition to systemic oppression, popularized by texts such as Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist. Those exposed to anti-racist materials were linked to heightened perceptions of racial bias in the study. So if you're exposed to anti-racist materials, you get this heightened perception of racial bias in the study. Participants were also more likely to support punitive measures against perceived offenders of so-called microaggressions, even in the absence of evidence. Well, of course, if you're guilty of a microaggression, there should be some punitive measure. Absence of evidence, well, in a zero tolerance world, I mean, so that's seen as, oh, this thing is bad. Microaggressions, I got to be punished for that. Finkelstein said, and when people are supposed to see anti-racist material in the ideology, it looks like what happens is that they become more likely to punish for any evidence of wrongdoing. That includes protesting people, calling for dismissal, demanding public apologies, receiving people calling for their relocation. These punitive measures are in some cases costing people their jobs. Okay, so they're just saying when people are discussing situations, it gets everyone mad and hostile, and there needs to be some kind of due process so that someone sees an example of racism in the class and they say, that just sounds like Professor Jones over there and what he said about those girls and the homosexuals and we want him out. And then you have like this mass hysteria. I'm not for that. I'm for people learning about history, especially when it comes to race and how it has impacted where we are now. That, if we learn that, that's the kind of DEI learning that we need. DEI programming psychological harms go beyond race, according to NCRI, spanning to religious identities as well. According to the study, anti-Islamophobia training led participants to detect bias against Muslims in neutral scenarios. Well, people are looking, and I guess it's going to depend on your view of what is anti-Muslim. But this goes, it's like, if you mention Muslims in anything, are you being anti-Muslim? No, I'm mentioning them. Okay, was there hostility? No. Okay, well, see, some people get really hostile at the mere mention of something. One key takeaway from Finkelstein in the NCRI study is that the authoritarianism comes from hostile attribution bias, looks different in the 21st century. According to Finkelstein, those who are likely to carry hostilities are people who are higher in what's called left-wing authoritarianism. What? Left-wing authoritarianism? How about right-wing authoritarianism? This is now a steady phenomenon. We, the people, have been studying right-wing authoritarianism since World War II. Oh, it's really only in the past 10, 15 years that people have started saying, wait a minute, this is on the left too. Okay, so what this is the right wing saying the left wing is as bad as us right-wing authoritarians. So, and it's used so they can, across all groupings, instead of DEI materials reducing bias, the study discovered they engendered a hostile attribution bias, amplifying perceptions of prejudicial hostility where none was present. Well, it depends. People are sensitive. They've been repressed for so long. They're bad ideas because they're hurting people, and that appears from research and appears to be far more prevalent and is shockingly public. These harms can be extremely widespread, said Finkelstein. So I think that is grounds to believe that from this research, and it suggests that we need to be focused on this data, and we need more data like it, because it's my study. And I don't think this is about speech. I certainly think it's about people's civil rights, and he wants civil rights for everyone, including the racist perps, which, civil rights for all, it's everyone. But I think we're losing sight of the fact that we need information. We need good information. Look, DEI, if all we had, instead of some kind of, processed form of how to deal with racism and that kind of thing, instead of having that, if we had instead just a plain history, tell me what happened to Asian Americans when they were in America in the 1890s, and they were Americans. They came here. I mean, that's the reason why we have birthright citizenship. Tell me about how Asian and Chinese Americans were lynched in Los Angeles. Tell me the history of how Filipinos were lynched in Stockton and Lodi. Tell me about these cases. Let people know this rich history that is American history that we don't know about. Tell me about, in November, how little Native American history we know. Tell me about the Indian Replacement Act of 1830. Tell me about how in 1830, Andrew Jackson signed that. Indians were sent to the reservations. The Trail of Tears. Tell me about that. I don't think enough Americans know that, especially in November. So how about this? Instead of DEI, we just have a sudden urgency to have real American history, inclusive American history taught at the high school and elementary levels. I mean, that's not DEI. That's telling people who are Americans their history. And it just seems that they're right, and people who don't like diversity, exclusion, or diversity, inclusion, and equity, they don't like these programs because they're too real. They don't like it because it shows that America did some bad things. America did. We're still trying to make up for what the nation did to the Native Americans. And if you look at what happened just before November, we had Joe Biden apologize for the Indian schools. How many people know that story? Happened within the month. An apology for the Indian schools, where they took Indians away from their culture, took Indians away from their family, and tried to make them white, tried to make them fit in society. You know, I complain about getting a ticket to Harvard. Like, oh, well, wasn't exactly like going to an Indian school, but at a certain level it was. Thank goodness I was smart enough, so now I get to talk to you from my closet. DEI. You know, if the right realized DEI stood for God in Latin, maybe they'd embrace it more. All right, that's our show for today. Yeah. Thanksgiving. More Thanksgiving talk tomorrow. I'll talk about the Butterball. What they did to those turkeys. Unbelievable. Hey, you know, I promised to do some laughter yoga. We're gonna go a minute for world peace, because that's what we do. It's intentional laughter. So we go, breathe in, and say hello. For the diaphragm. "62 seconds for world peace." Intentional laughter from your laughter yoga guru, Emil Amok. And now we just breathe in, breathe out, and we think about loving kindness. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Emil Amok to you. Till next time.